Hey, what's up? In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use displacement to make some like warped gradients a little bit. In Photoshop, it's really simple. It's really not super complex, pretty easy to do. I did it for this Easter project. You can see where it's kind of got some waviness to it. So we're going to do that in Photoshop. So let's go ahead and open up Photoshop and get started. All right, so I'm going to make a new document. 1920 by 1080 is fine. Hit create. So in this one, we're gonna make our simple, just a very simple straight linear gradient. So what I wanna do is make a new layer. I'm actually gonna use a shape layer. So I'm gonna click on my rectangle tool and I'm gonna go to fill up here and I'm gonna click on gradient right there. And we'll just do a simple gradient for now. And I'm gonna click and drag this over here and just make a big fat square. There we go. And so now I want to apply a color theme of some sort to this gradient, and I'm pretty bad at picking the colors just randomly. So what I'm going to use is color.adobe.com. So I'm going to pull up my browser and we're going to go to color.adobe.com, and from here I'm going to go to explore, and you may want to make sure you go ahead and log in as well if you're a Creative Cloud member, which you probably are. So I'm going to type in something like colorful. All right, pretty random topic and pretty broad, but we'll go with it and see what comes up. So let's scroll through and just sort of pick some random colors. So we'll do this one here. I'm going to click on add to library, but I'm also going to click on the actual gradient itself or the swatch itself and go down to where it says download as ASE, and I'll show you why in just a little bit. All right, so that's good. We'll grab one more just for kicks. We'll do this one here. So add to library and download ASE. All right, so if you were logged in, it should have added it to your library. So I'm gonna go back to Photoshop. And from here, I wanna pull up the libraries tab. You can go to window and libraries if you don't see yours, but mine is right over here. We'll click on that. And it may take a minute or two for it to sync and load with your account, but once that pops up, they should be in there. So I'm gonna go down to, let's turn off this colors here, color theme. So here are the two that I just imported. But here is the frustrating thing with Photoshop, and I don't understand why. You can use this if you're, just kind of picking the random colors like this. But for some reason, if I were trying to edit my gradient, so for instance, I'm gonna double click on my rectangle here, I'm gonna click on gradient, and here I have my options to add colors. So if I click on this little swatch right there and click on color, it gives me my color picker window. And if I take my cursor off here, you can see I have the color picker automatically selected. But if I drag it over to the swatch, it disappears and I can't use this. For the life of me, I can't figure out how to get that to work properly. So it's extremely annoying. That seems ridiculous, but there is a workaround. So I'm gonna hit OK and just close these out real quick. So the way I figured out how to actually use those swatches is to go to the swatches tab. So if you go to window again in swatches, mine is up here. I'm gonna click on this little menu option right there, way in the top right. And I'm going to go down to import swatches. And so we downloaded an ASE file. It's asking for an ACO file, but I don't think you can get that anymore. So I'm going to go up to my downloads folder, which is here. And nothing shows up, but I want to change this little option to ASE. And so now we have our swatches right there. So I accidentally did that one twice. I'm going to do these two right here. So this beautiful woman in colorful wig and watercolor smear painting. And so I have both of those highlighted. I'm gonna hit load. And so if I scroll down to this list, those pop up right there. Let me close these down. Those pop up right here. So the colorful wig one and the acrylic and watercolor. Open those up. Now you can see those swatches right there. They're pretty similar, but we'll make it work. So now if I go and open up that gradient and click on the gradient and click on my color option, now I have that color picker right there and I can drag it right on top of those colors and it works perfectly. So we'll build our gradient off of our color swatch. So I'm gonna actually click on this one. I'm just gonna do the dark color there. And you can click right here to add more swatches. So click there and we'll do this green and we'll click here and we'll do the yellow. We'll click here and we'll do orange. We'll click here and do red, and then I'm actually going to go back to that blue color there. Okay, and that's a nice looking color, so we'll hit OK there. And we can maybe angle it maybe a little bit. Let's do something kind of like, let's go with that. All right, so I'm going to hit OK. And so I'm going to save this as just my basic gradient. So I'm going to do Command S to save, and we're gonna call this, let me go to my desktop and have this test folder. So we'll call this main gradient. And we're gonna make this maybe we leave it as a PSD. We'll just do that and hit save. Okay, so I'm gonna make a new document. So Command N to make a new document. 1920 by 1080 is good. Hit create. And so now I'm gonna nest our main gradient inside of this one. So I'm gonna go to File and Place Linked and go to Main Gradient right there. And boom. Now we have a linked layer. You can see it right there. So it'll be easy to go back and forth and change colors. But now we need to create our displacement layer. So once we have that, we're gonna add it to this, and it's gonna take the dark and light values of that displacement layer, and it's gonna warp it all around. So let's make another new document, Command N, and we'll call this displacement and hit create. So at this point, your displacement can be anything you want. I don't think it needs to be black and white, just has to have dark and light values. So for instance, I'm gonna make a new layer. So Shift Command N for a new layer, hit OK. And we already have a white background, so I'm gonna hit B on the keyboard for my brush tool. And if I go to my color picker, I'm just gonna do like a dark color here. And I'm gonna bump up my brush size and just randomly paint some colors on here. I have some brush settings where it's creating that scattering look, so let's turn that off. And we'll just maybe add some more here. Make it nice and dark. Okay, then we're gonna add maybe some random grays in here. So this can literally be anything. This is just as an example. Let's do some more dark in here. I'm gonna hit Command S to save it. And this is our displacement. So we're gonna drop it in the same spot as a Photoshop file and just hit save. All right, so now we're gonna go back to our original document here where our gradient is nested in. And I'm gonna click on our gradient layer, and I'm gonna go to filter, and I'm gonna go down to distort and displace. So this is asking by how many pixels do you wanna displace this? So for this one, we're gonna do something big like 300 by 300. 300 by 330, sure, why not? I'm gonna hit OK. And now it's saying, all right, what do you want to displace it with? And so we're gonna use our displacement Photoshop file. So I'm gonna hit this one right here. And so now it warps this all over the place. And that looks pretty cool. That's kind of an interesting design. So that's almost kind of the basic of it. So now I'm gonna go back to our displacement layer and just play around with some options. So what I can do is I'm just gonna duplicate that layer. We'll hide this one, and let's blur this one like a ton. So I'm gonna go filter, blur. What if I did like motion blur? I said okay and see what happens. All right, and we're gonna hit Command S to save. And I'm gonna go back to our document and double click on displace again. You have to kind of redo it every time. And displacement. And now it kind of softened it up a little bit. It's got some nice swirliness going on. So now let's go back to displacement. Let's just play a few more rounds to see what comes up. So maybe let's do, for kicks, let's do a new layer, Shift Command N. Actually, you know what, cancel that. I'm gonna do a shape layer that is just a single color, maybe a black or like a dark gray. All right, I'm gonna click and drag to make a big fat square. And I'm gonna then go to filter, and let's go to noise and add noise. And I'm gonna just rasterize it because I don't plan to really scale this up or down. Let's add a lot of noise to it and hit OK. And then I'm gonna change my blending mode to like lighten or screen maybe. You can kind of click through these. What's cool is this can be like just really anything you want. There's really no rules when it comes to this. Let's try this one right here. So well, I got some noise in there, so I'm gonna hit Command S and let's see what happens. Maybe nothing, I don't really know. So now I'm gonna double click on that displace. Okay, displacement, boom. So now you got some cool noise in there. That's a little bit too strong. Probably scale that down a little bit. Command S to save, always save before you go back and forth. Double click, yes, and displacement. So now you got some really cool noise in those gradients, which is kind of nice. Let's go in here. Let's throw in like a hard shape. So this like triangle tool. I'm gonna make a really simple triangle right in the middle. Let's just see what that does. Command S to save. It doesn't have any noise on it, so it's above the noise layer. So let's go here. Double click. All right, there you go. So that's something. What if I make it white? And we'll save that. It's got a stroke on it, I think. Let me, hitting U on the keyboard to get these options up here. Let's turn that stroke off. And let's Command S to save that. Back here, double click. Okay, displacement, boom. There you go. So it completely changes the color, which is kind of cool. We could go in there. Let's rasterize this triangle. So I'm gonna hit E on the keyboard like I'm gonna erase it. Click and hit OK. Or I can maybe right click, turn it to a smart object, and then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we'll blur the mess out of it here like that. Hit OK. And it gives me this little a layer mask. So I think I can click here on this little layer mask, hit B on the keyboard for my brush tool. I have a black selected, which is good. And then I think I can kind of paint this out right there. So that's kind of cool like that. So I'm clicking somewhere on this triangle where this layer mask is on, and it basically hides that blurriness from that. It's kind of cool. All right, so now let's see what happens. Let's maybe change. Let's go with it. So I'm gonna hit Command S to save. Go back to our main document. Displace. Keep all that the same. Displacement. All right, so pretty random. Now, one more thing we can do, let's go ahead and turn that off real quick. One thing we can do is like add an image. So I'm gonna pull up my browser window. We'll go to like Unsplash or something like that. And I'm gonna type in like ink or something. So again, anything really goes. So we'll just scroll down, maybe find something kind of cool. Let's load a few more. So this is kind of cool. Let's do this. I'm gonna download this by Powell Zarinsky, I guess. So I'm gonna go, actually I'm gonna drag that into here. So I'm gonna click and drag my image into my Photoshop document, and boom, there it is. I'm gonna move it over here. So I'm gonna scale this up actually and rotate it. So I'm gonna make it kind of look like an explosion maybe. Of some sort, maybe something like that. And then I'm going to duplicate that, Command J to duplicate. Then I'm gonna hit Command T to do the transform mode. I'm gonna rotate that, drag it over here, something like that. And then I'm gonna do some blending modes on that to get it to blend together. So Shift Command, or I click my layer, hit Shift plus and minus on the keyboard, and we'll do lighten. And we also wanna add a dark layer behind this. So I'm gonna make it another shape layer, and we'll just make a nice dark layer behind those two. Okay, the image is already kind of noisy, so I don't think we really need to mess with that at all. So I'm gonna hit Command S to save that. And we're gonna go back to our displacement, double click, hit OK, and displacement, and boom, now we got this crazy looking, almost looks like a gradient map on top of this. So I'm gonna go back to displacement here again, and let's group these together, or really merge them together. So I'm gonna click on those, hit Command E to merge them together, and maybe let's add some blur to this as well. So we'll just blur this a good bit. Probably would be smart to make it a smart layer, but just for example's sake, we'll go with this for now. All right, hit OK. Back, Command S to save. And let's try 300 and see what happens. Maybe we'll reduce that number. So we got some stuff going on there. What if I make it like 80 and 80 and hit OK? Displacement. All right, so that's kind of cool too. It really softens up that gradient and gets some really cool wispiness going on in there. All right, so as far as the displacing a gradient, that's basically it. And so as I said before, that's really the technique I used for this design here, which is pretty simple, but just simple and colorful is what we're going for. So as you can see, I have my main gradient displaced. So we have our typical gradient. If I go in another layer, so we have that nice straight line linear gradient there, and that's linked inside of this one. Then I've added a displacement on top of that, and you can see it's pretty subtle. It's got some really kind of just some waviness to it, nothing too crazy to get that gradient look. And then on top of that, inside of here, I think I did some color correction just to get a bit of a different look. I'm using just some basic adjustment layers to that, so color balance and select color to get a different colorful look right there. From there, I added just some specks and noise on top of that. So you can see these little white specks in there. And that is just a layer that looks kind of like this with some effects on it to get, I'll get back to there, to get that just kind of speckled, dirty look. And then some grain on top of that. Now we added grain to our gradient displacement, but then you can maybe add some grain on top of that as well. To do that, I'm just going to make a new layer. Maybe do, yeah, a black is fine. And I'm just going to draw a nice big box on top of that. And then I'm going to go to filter, noise, add noise, rasterize, that's fine. And we'll turn this down a little bit, something like that. You can always adjust your opacity layer, but we'll go with that for now. And then I'm going to do some blending modes on that. Probably just screen. We'll add that light looking gradient on top of there. I'm going to turn that opacity down just a little bit, again, just to add some noise to our image. The other thing I did was something with the text is I just took a displacement. Let's go back to our here. I just took a text layer. I'm gonna hit T on the keyboard for my text layer, and I'm gonna type in Easter. Pretty simple font. We'll keep it pretty thin. I'm gonna move this down here, and we'll change our color to like a white. So once I had this, I made this a linked layer as well. So first you have to make it a smart object. It makes it a smart object there. Then you right click and I go to linked layer, convert to linked right there, and we'll call this text. Throw that in our little test folder and hit save. So then I can add a displacement to this. So I can click on it, go to filter, distort, displace, and hit, let's do like 20 and 20, hit OK. Let's try our displacement that we made. Okay, it's a little bit much. I would probably do something a little softer for this one because that one has a lot of different things going on. So I'm gonna double click and hit OK. I'm gonna choose a different displacement. And this is maybe something you want to do that's a little less contrasty, I guess. So I'm gonna go into my original Photoshop, link to layers. This is this displacement 3. It's very soft. I'll show you in just a bit. So it adds a little bit of warpness to it. And I'll open it up just to show you what that looks like. So this is that displacement. So it's just some really light grays and whites in there, just kind of warpy and soft. So then I think I duplicated this layer as well, and I maybe added some motion blur or something to it. So we'll add some blur, and we'll go to, let's do like a motion blur. So we got this, maybe I added like a angled thing there. As you can see it blurring my text like crazy. It's pretty cool. We'll hit OK. And maybe I can click on the displace and we'll bump that number up to like 250. See what happens. And let's do displacement 3 again. All right, so it moves it like way over here. Maybe we'll do a different displacement. Let's try our original one and see what happens. We'll do it again. We'll do a different number. Let's do like 50 and 50. And we'll hit OK. All right, so it's pretty strong. Maybe you can turn our motion blur down a good bit. You get this like wispiness going on. So it's maybe a little too much going on there, but you get the idea. So feel free to play with that and get some different looks. I think I even maybe added like a glow to it. So I double clicked on there and I went to like an outer glow. Bump that noise up some, got some noise in there. Crank our, I guess too much noise. So it gives it a little bit more of a glow going on. So again, just playing around with some ideas, but I really just wanted to show you how to distort some gradients and distort anything using Displace in Photoshop. So I hope that was helpful. That's really all I have for today. It's nothing too complicated. It just takes playing around with it and you can come up with tons of different options. So thanks again for checking it out and we'll see you on the next one.